Welcome back, All Sports Western New York. Tim Graham from the Buffalo News in the studio. And Tim, I'm excited, as everybody can tell, because I love boxing. I've loved boxing ever since I was a kid.
You still love boxing?
I still love boxing.
You say in the present tense you love boxing?
I love boxing. I'm disappointed in boxing because there's very little to get us excited about in boxing. So let's start with the obvious. It was the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. Like so many others, you know, I paid for the pay-per-view. Actually, I was at a friend's house. I don't know if I've actually given the money yet. But like everybody else, greatly disappointed. And now I have to say, I watched the fight. I could never have said that Pacquiao looked like he was injured. I was completely mystified at his lack of early aggression. I understood as the fight went on, Mayweather would stick him with that right every time he started to get close. But right off the get-go, Pacquiao seemed tentative as to how to attack, which really I was completely dumbfounded because I thought, you know, Freddie Roach had a plan for years as to how to fight Mayweather, and it never materialized.
Manny Pacquiao actually hurt Floyd Mayweather a couple of times during the fight and then couldn't follow up with it, and mostly because of Floyd Mayweather's defense. Once he does this, and he's slick enough with the way he throws his shoulders in there, everything comes off the the forearms and the wrists and the shoulders and into the gloves, and that's why he's such a brilliant fighter. So even when he was hurt, there was really never any follow-up. But that's where the shoulder injury comes in. What if he was able to do some different things throughout the fight? It's almost, and I hate to compare it to the deflated ball situation going on with the New England Patriots right now, but if the New England Patriots had won the Super Bowl and we knew nothing about these deflated footballs, okay, fine, we'd move along our lives, nobody would care, no one would be offended. But it's after the fight, Pacquiao's own camp admits that he had this shoulder injury, a torn rotator cuff, and then blames it for his performance in the fight, that he couldn't throw the right hook, which he's a left-handed fighter. Your opposite-handed hook is one of your best weapons, or should be, for a professional fighter. And so the camp after the fight was blaming it immediately. And that's when it became offensive to me, much like you find out there's a deflated football in use. How can you let this product, these damaged goods, go into the ring? And that's where it became a bigger issue for me than just a dud fight. I think that had it been the fight and it was over with and we went about our way, we'd shrug and say, well, that's boxing. Sometimes you just get a matchup that doesn't live up to the expectations. But then for Pacquiao's promoter, Bob Arum, for Pacquiao to admit that he went into the ring less than what he was supposed to, at $99 a pop for the pay-per-view, at hundreds, not just thousands of dollars for ringside seat, hundreds of thousands of dollars for one seat to sit there and watch the fight. You heard a story after the fact of a fan, a Pacquiao fan, betting $500,000 on Pacquiao to win. Would we have all bought the fight if we knew that we were getting an injured product? And so it just added to me to the whole distaste of the event, which was transcendent, which went into the mainstream. People were either giving boxing a chance, probably for the first time in a long time, or maybe giving it its first chance if you're young enough. Let's say you're in your teens, or when we first started paying attention to boxing, we were 9, 10 years old probably. You watch that and say, well, what's the big deal? I'm not going to do that again. Everything from the credential controversy to the domestic violence aspect of Mayweather, and he was supposed to be wearing the black hat. Classic villain versus the hero scenario. And after the fight, we found out that everybody was wearing a black hat, and they stuck a gun in our back and robbed us for the money.
It really, I don't know if you saw Max Kellerman this past weekend on HBO when they did.
He was passionate in his defense of the event.
He really explained you're in a catch-22 if you're Manny Pacquiao and his camp, because if he truly has a shoulder injury. Now, did he ever get the surgery?
He did. He did have the surgery.
So if you truly have a shoulder injury 3 weeks out, how do you handle that? Because if you postpone the fight for surgery, the fight doesn't take place for a year. And in that case, Mayweather may never fight you.
That's a big problem.
So now Kellerman claims they went to the body that was doing the urine and blood testing. They were okay with him getting the shots prior to the fight. But that somehow there was a clerical error when they submitted to the Vegas Boxing Commission that they wanted the shot that night at 9:30 prior to the fight.
Well, the U.S. Anti-Drug Administration, which was brought in to oversee this fight, because, all right, take a step back. The major reason that an injury jeopardizes the whole event is because the negotiations between these two sides were contentious, and that's why it took 5 years for this fight to even happen. And one of the major reasons and controversial ones was that Floyd Mayweather was essentially accusing Floyd Mayweather or Manny Pacquiao of being on performance-enhancing drugs, and he wanted him to go through drug testing. So as a bullet point for this fight to happen, they brought in an anti-drug administration. Well, that was only for performance-enhancing or illegal drugs. It wasn't for medicinal drugs. So USADA, after everything was brought up, came out and said, this wasn't us. We had no say.
They were fine with
we could tell you that this is a good drug, but we aren't testing for that. We're not the authority on that. So what happens is Pacquiao's camp doesn't let the Nevada State Athletic Commission know until about 2 hours before the fight. Now, Bob, you know this isn't the only fight of the night. There's an undercard. Tickets have actually already been punched. There are people sitting in the arena watching the undercard fights when this is being presented to the Nevada State Athletic Commission that he has an injury. So what's the commission to do? They were put, the Pacquiao camp put the Nevada Commission into a corner and said, what are you going to do, cancel the fight? They wanted their shot. And the commission actually held its ground and said, well, you know, they probably took the lesser of two evils. They can't cancel the show now. You know, they've already collected the money. The pay-per-views have been purchased. I mean, it's too late now. But this is boxing, and I think that we don't really know that surgery was necessary at the time. Maybe 3 weeks off of rest would have been enough to delay the fight. I understand the concerns. A delay of this fight might mean it doesn't happen, but that's where it all became a cash grab and where it became a bit offensive. This is boxing. You can't call up somebody from the minors. You don't have a teammate to rely upon.
Right.
There's not a 30-team league schedule that must go on. You know, John Wall, if he's going to play with his broken hand, the game's going to happen whether John Wall plays or not. Manny Pacquiao, in boxing, these fights get delayed all the time for injuries. They're the only two guys in the ring, and they should, and for the sake of the fans and for the sake of the sport, to grow, to continue to be relevant, to be fair to the fans, to stop burning the fans, needs to be as honest of a competition as possible.
So why do you think they weren't? Why do you think they were not honest? Why don't you think they came out and said,
cash grab.
Give me a month to rest up and we'll put off money? Think it was
because of that trepidation of, well, then who knows what happens? Then Mayweather's camp, as fickle as they are, maybe they back out, so it was all about the money.
I'm not a fan of Mayweather in any way, shape, or form, although I admire his defensive abilities in the ring. He makes every fight against him boring because he's so good defensively.
He's so good, you're right.
Although I think that Oscar De La Hoya, had he been a couple years younger, would have beaten him. He was beating him halfway through the fight when they fought, it was about 5 years ago.
8 years ago.
Yeah, and then he ran out of gas. But his style, he was able to get to Mayweather, but that's another story. So boxing is, obviously it's a flawed sport. It's not governed in any way, shape, or form, as you've already explained. There's so many different titles that you never know how many belts they're going to carry into the ring. So what's next for boxing? I mean, I have 3 sons. They're all huge sports fans. They played football. They wrestled. They love combat sports. They love the UFC. If I hadn't steered them towards boxing, if I hadn't insisted that they join me at some of these pay-per-view events, they'd have no interest whatsoever.
Right.
How long do you think boxing can continue on life support?
Boxing is at an interesting point right now. As bad as this fight was, there are still some rays of hope. But where this fight was so damaging is because the casual sports fan was tuning in to give it a chance. Boxing has its hardcore fan base that has remained flat for a long time. Even though boxing it doesn't appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated anymore, and you'd rarely see it on Sports Center, the ratings are about the same. That hardcore fan base is there. But to survive and to thrive and to grow, you need all those other people to come in who maybe were giving it a passing glance. Al Heyman, who's a very mysterious figure in boxing, he works with Floyd Mayweather. He is a promoter, manager, and he has been hoarding fighters. He's up to about 200 fighters right now, and he has time on pretty much every network that shows sports, everything but Fox. And Heyman, his promotional company, is working on that. So he's on NBC, CBS, ABC/ESPN, Spike TV, all these networks, and he's putting his fighters on these shows to bring boxing back to the way even the way we used to watch it. We didn't used to have to buy a pay-per-view to watch boxing. We didn't have to have HBO or Showtime. He's trying to put it back on free TV, make it accessible, so that way we learn these backstories of these guys, find out who they are as people, start to root for them or against them, because, you know, you need the villain in boxing too.
All right, sit right there, Tim. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. Plenty more to talk about boxing. I'm sure we're going to run out of time, but we'll be back with Tim Graham right after this.